Welcome to This Week in Health IT. It's Tuesday News Day, where we look at the news which will impact health IT. My name is Bill Russell, former healthcare CIO coach, consultant, and creator of This Week in Health IT, a set of podcast videos and collaboration events dedicated to developing the next generation of health leaders. I want to thank Sirius Healthcare. They have been a phenomenal sponsor this year. And the thing I love about working with them is they support our mission. And our mission is to develop the next generation of health leaders. And their weekly support of the show has allowed us to expand our offerings, to bring on some additional staff to help with production and research as well. Just fantastic partnership, and I really appreciate them and their commitment to the industry. Don't forget about 3X Drex. Drex Ford is a frequent contributor to the show, and he sends out 3 texts 3 times a week with 3 stories vetted by him to help you stay current. To receive those texts, Drex, D-R-E-X, to 484848. Gosh, it's been a busy week. Just a ton of stories. I think part of that is the health conference, right? So the HLTH conference is going on right now. A lot of announcements, a lot of things going on. I'm going to start over at LinkedIn. If you are not participating in our LinkedIn conversations, I really want to encourage you to do that. You can follow me at Bill J. Russell out on LinkedIn, and I post one story every day, every weekday morning, and I put a little commentary with it. And if you don't know this, LinkedIn has a limit in terms of how much text you can actually put in there, which I find to be perfect because it forces me to make one point or really narrow down on what is the most important thing about this particular story. All right. Let's see. Let's take a look at some of the things that we have out there. I posted a couple of cybersecurity stories, and what I find interesting in doing this is, generally speaking, you don't want to hear cybersecurity stories. If I do a show on cybersecurity, the ratings go down, and it's interesting because it's just not. It's just interesting to me. It speaks to the challenge we have in the industry as CISOs and CIOs of getting people to care about it, getting people to want to talk about it, because no one really wants to talk about it. But this is the real stuff. You saw what happened with UHS. That's a big deal, what happened with UHS. So anyway, there was Ars Technica did a story. DHS warns that Botnet malware is one of the most prevalent threats today. And let me tell you a little bit about what this thing does. It is a nasty piece of software. It has the ability to spread to nearby Wi-Fi networks. It has a polymorphic design, meaning it constantly changes its identifiable characteristics, making it hard to detect as malicious. All right, so if you can't tell if it's malicious, you're just going to let it through, and it's going to keep growing. Fileless infections, such as PowerShell scripts that also make post-infections difficult to detect. Worm-like features that steal administrative passwords and use them to spread throughout the network. Email thread hijacking, meaning it steals email chains from one infected machine and uses a spoofed identity to respond to trick other people in the thread to open a malicious file or click on a malicious link. And wow. Yeah, so this is a pretty big deal. I'm sure your security organization is keeping an eye on this, which is great. My so what on this, I typically put some sort of question or so what at the end of these things. And my question for this one is your health system ahead of the cyber terrorists? And my close on this is, I think everyone in the organization, the so what, I would want everyone in my organization to really know 4 things. 1, how to spot an attack. Because the earlier they're able to spot it, if you have 20,000 employees, the earlier they're able to spot it, the better off everybody's going to be. The second is, how do you warn others of a potential attack? Do people know, if I see something that doesn't look right, where to go? The third, how to defend yourself and your company, right? So don't click on this, don't do this, whatever. Again, even if it happens, how to spot when an attack has happened, how to warn others when an attack has happened. And then the fourth thing is what to expect in the event of an attack, right? There could potentially be news reporters sitting outside your hospitals. There could be, do they know what to do once that actually happens? The other cyber story, and I'm just going to go straight to it, this one I find fascinating. WashingtonPost.com. Microsoft seeks to disrupt Russian criminal Botnet it fears could seek to sow confusion in the presidential election. And the reason this is fascinating to me is Microsoft's going on the offensive. They're actually going after the botnet, the Russian criminal botnet. And that's exciting to me. I think our cybersecurity companies, we should ask them, do they have offensive capabilities? It may not be enough to have just defensive capabilities. They may need to have offensive capabilities in order to, if all we're going to do is sit here and try to build a wall and do all the things that we do, knowing full well that they're attacking us every day. It's interesting to just consider the concept of being on the offensive. And my so what on this is this a picture of the future? Are Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, are they going to be our first line of defense? And are they going to be the new cyber military, if you will, to actually protect us from these attacks? Just something to think about. These are the kind of things I think about. Hopefully you're thinking about them as well. Let's see, another good article, Moby Health News, Livango's lead investor on what the next model of care could look like. Again, Moby Health News. I like this article, and it's Hemant Taneja. He's the managing director of General Catalyst, and he had a bunch of really good quotes in here. In fact, I pulled them out, put them in the post. The first is, here we go, a common issue in the digital health space where the health providers and the technologists often live in different silos, which can create barriers in innovation. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. I've heard that you have the Silicon Valley companies who don't really have enough medical background, and they just bang their head against the wall in a couple different ways until they realize that healthcare doesn't really operate the same way as all the other industries that they've been associated with. They take, some of them get their bumps and bruises, learn what they need to learn, and then they go on to be successful. Others, quite frankly, just don't make it. And those silos are important to break down. He goes on and says, what you need is to try to build a business that understands that healthcare is not a free market. And we've talked about that on this show. It's a different market. It's hard to get your arms around. It's not a free market. And there's a lot of things that people just don't understand. They say, we're just going to go directly to the consumer. That's great, but the consumer won't pay for anything because they expect insurance to pay for it. So you have to find that balance of what are the economic drivers within healthcare. And we've talked to some entrepreneurs, and they've given us some, if you can find the magic that helps an employer to reduce their costs, if you find the magic that helps a provider to be more efficient, to drive higher quality, to reduce their operating costs, if you can find something, well, actually, if you can get into any of the payers, CMS or some of the commercial payers with some value add, you're going to be successful there. But just understand it's not a free market. So it's not going to operate. If you're in these other industries and you think, oh, these principles apply, they just don't. And so there's a lot of wisdom there. But the last one, and I think the most important thing that he makes a note of, is I think COVID has accelerated a lot of good innovation, but most of the ideas that have accelerated, you think about things like telehealth or concepts around home hospital or sense of urgency around thinking about how to take care of the elderly population. I don't think those are ideas that are going to come and go. There is persistence to those. I agree. There's a ton of persistence to those. Those are, I believe, the future of healthcare. And we saw a glimpse of it through the pandemic. And I think that's going to be what healthcare looks like. If the question is when, right? So I had this conversation with somebody and they said, hold on, Bill, slow down, because the money's not there yet. The economic model's not there yet to drive it. We're not getting the reimbursements that you think we are. And we're not going to start popping sensors all over the place and setting up essentially ICUs in the home and that kind of stuff, because there's just not an economic model to support it. And so that's going to be the thing. I think that's going to get looked at. And as the wheels of healthcare turn, we're going to have to keep an eye on the economic model. But I agree with them. There's persistence. I think that this is the area you're seeing Best Buy go there. You're seeing Walmart go there. They know that the future of healthcare is in the home, and that the economic model will soon follow. And that's, again, I think that's a lot of wisdom in that article. Talked about Microsoft. Okay, from time to time, I throw this article, I throw this concept out. Who's the most influential person in healthcare? This one, of course, gets the most traction. Over 4,000 views of this in LinkedIn. Who knows how their algorithm works? Some of these get like 500 views. Some of them get 4,000 views. You just never know how it's going to pan out. This led to an interesting conversation. But anyway, my question was, is Judy Faulkner the most influential person in healthcare? So Judy had a conversation she had an interview at the health conference, and she talked about all the things that they're doing and shared her lessons learned from Epic's COVID-19 response. And Epic, from all accounts I've heard from their clients, performed admirably and was really supportive and did a lot of really great things. And he asked those questions. And I'm just wondering, think about this. Epic is not a publicly held company. So it really is Judy. And you've seen the influence that Epic, and when Epic was like 20% market share was one thing, but they're now, approaching 50, 60, they're now approaching global. So when they make decisions and they make changes to the software and whatnot, it impacts most of our major academic medical centers across the country. They could change workflows. They don't do that willy-nilly, but I'm just saying that their software is integral to how we deliver care across the country. And so the decisions that they make are important. So I don't have a problem when you have someone like Judy at the helm who is reasonable and she has a qualities of humility and service. It's not, you don't get too concerned. Everyone's like, oh, it's Judy, whatever. But at some time in the future, it won't be Judy, and it could be some capitalist who wants to really take advantage of the market space or the market share. Let's hope that never happens. But if it does happen, it's a completely different company. It's a completely different way of looking at it. That's, I think, what we experienced with Microsoft a little bit. The Steve Ballmer years were horrific. And I'll just come out and say it. I hated dealing with Microsoft during the Ballmer years. It was all about money. It was all about licensing. It was all about how to crank another nickel per license out of me as an organization. I think, by the way, I think that's changed completely under Satya. I think it's very consumer focused and consumer driven. I can't really speak to the Bill Gates era, but the contrast of Satya and Ballmer is really amazing. And I think that's something to keep an eye on with Epic as we move forward. But anyway, just for fun, I threw out there, just wondering if anyone is as influential as Judy. I throw out, is Fauci more, is Seema Verma potentially? But the reality is they could get booted out of office, or Fauci could fall into whatever, he'd fall into a situation where he's not in favor and be moved on to some other role. The reality is no one's moving Judy out, and from a longevity perspective, it's her. Matthew Holt asked me this question. He goes, all I know is Halverson pointed out everything wrong with healthcare IT, but somehow amazingly, Epic had already fixed it. And I took a look at the answers and the stuff that was in there. And it's interesting because I think this is part of the challenge with Epic. And the challenge with Epic is they view everything from an Epic world. No other EHR exists. And nor should it, actually. It just shouldn't exist. If everything in the world was on Epic, the world would be a better place. That's almost how they view the world. And I made that point back to Matthew on that. That just, the reality is, Epic can honestly say, we have solved a lot of those problems. You have an interoperability problem? We've solved it. All these Epic hospitals can talk to each other without any problem. And that, by the way, that's no small feat. That's the case they will make. They'll say, we've done this, we've done this. The other thing I'll say about Epic is, generally, I've heard people say they have a heavy hand, and I agree with that, actually. I look at their honor roll. I've read their contracts for health systems. I've read their contracts for people to participate in their app orchard, and they're somewhat heavy-handed contracts. And honor roll is a heavy-handed way to get the health systems to adhere to what they're going to do. With all that being said, you know what? Failed implementations are way down. Systems are patched. They're kept current. Thousands of applications have been rationalized. It depends how you look at it. I actually say in this, they've either been rationalized or assimilated. But the reality is it's simplified the health IT architecture. It has made things better. And so again, under Judy's leadership, I think Epic has done a lot of really good things, even with the heavy hand. I'm just wondering how that passes to the next generation. All right, enough of that. That's just interesting fodder to talk about. The next one, which got a significant amount of traction as well, is the iPhone 12 came out. If you're not paying attention, I think it went on sale on Friday. So you can pre-order on Friday. Hopefully you get your new iPhone 12 before Halloween hits, if you need it. I'm trying to figure out what's the new killer app that comes out with the iPhone 12 that I really need it. I'm not sure it's really going to matter. I'm probably going to end up with it anyway. So the question I ask around this, is the mobile phone the most underutilized device in healthcare? So when we look at this, we all know these things, right? You can connect your mobile phone to a network virtually anywhere in the United States. It has cameras that are just unbelievable at this point. low light. They can do so many incredible things. It has the processing power that can eclipses what we landed on the moon, eclipses early mainframes. It's just amazing. Storage is pretty much limitless in the cloud. And one of the things I wonder, is it underutilized? And why would it be underutilized? By the way, I feel like if you put it on a scale of underutilized might be kind, I don't even think we're at the starting gate of what the phone can do in healthcare. It's not getting there. And so I wondered, why is that? And it just feels to me that the economic model and the mission don't seem to be enough to generate patient-first solutions. And I'm wondering what it's going to require for that to happen. And I think it's going to be, we need a new kind of health system, a digital-first health system. And the analogy I use, or the example I use, is in the banking industry. So in the banking industry, if you remember way back when, all of a sudden we saw these internet-only banks show up. No buildings, no facilities, lower fees, higher returns, use any ATM in the world, that kind of stuff. Most of them folded, by the way. They were folded into another financial institution. The one I remember the most is Wingspan. A lot of fanfare. It was really interesting. But it went away. It folded into, I forget who it folded into, but it folded into somebody. And the impact of that, just the fact that it existed, caused every bank to change. So if you're at Chase, Schwab, you're at JP Morgan Chase, if you're at Wells Fargo, if you're at any bank, if you're even at a local bank at this point, you expect them to have a mobile app. You expect them to be able to cash a check online. You expect them to reimburse your fees at any ATM in the country. That is a direct result of Wingspan. That's a direct result of that business model that came first, that changed the way we think about how banking could be done. And I just wonder if that's the thing that needs to happen here, a digital first, digital health system, digital health plans, those kind of things. And the last thing I leave us with is this, the promise of Livango and Teladoc. Got a lot of comments on this one. People went back and forth. Trey Lauderdale with Hillrom, of course, a huge mobility and communications company, said, I couldn't agree more. Collectively as an industry, we haven't even picked the low-hanging fruit of empowering our caregivers with fully integrated mobility solutions. A huge green space for improvement on that front. The move to leverage these consumer devices to improve care with RPM and other use cases has even more potential. And there's 8 replies to that. Jerry Toney's president of Mobile Integrate. Trey, in my opinion, clinical mobility ROI is in the eye of the beholder. The hard dollar savings are not obvious when compared to existing and or cheap mobile voice phones, device, medical cases, medical grade accessories, apps, MDM add up. The ROI needs to come from informatics, clinical on productivity, and patient care, enabling care teams to push to talk as a team, wound documentation with camera, things that the cow or dumb phone combination can't do. For Epic, there are charting capabilities that you don't get in Rover. Still need to use hyperspace on a PC. And I think all this is proving my point that we are at the starting gate on this stuff. And I think COVID has really pushed this forward. I was talking to a group of people this week just about, we couldn't get money for iPads before COVID, and then all of a sudden we couldn't get enough iPads for COVID. But now we've purchased all these iPads within the health system, and the question becomes, how are we going to use them? And that's the right question. Okay, we have these, by the way, these tools have always been available. It just required a little vision to say, how are we going to use these iPads? How are we going to use these iPhones? How are we going to use these mobile devices? How are we going to use these sensors in the home? How are we going to use these things to effectively deliver care, to drive down costs, to improve patient outcomes? And I think everywhere that people have experienced mobility, they have said, this is awesome. And Jerry Toney's again came back and said, in my opinion, Epic Rover was one of the tipping points for mobility, going from nice to have to must have in acute care. And I think he's right. I think when you have a market share like Epic has, and you introduce these mobile tools, you get to see, people get to use it and experience it. Just like COVID, people got to experience it and use it, and they say, this is good, I want more of it. I still think mobility is the area that we have not spent enough time and given enough energy and thought. Okay, next story. I'm spending a lot of time on LinkedIn because I kind of like the back and forth with you guys. So please come out there and interact with these stories because it's fun to get your comments. All right, there's a new service company out there. Providence put a bunch of companies together. It looks like a roll-up strategy to me. They bought Blue Tree, they bought Nav and Hafty, they bought, it's not only IT services, there's some other things that are incorporated into the service company. It's a fairly sizable service company. It makes a lot of sense. There's a way for them to position their VC-backed companies. They now have a sales organization to go out and really position those. They needed that, to be honest with you. It's it's odd to expect health system employees to also do sales type of roles and capabilities. And actually, to be honest with you, it's off-putting to have the VP of innovation or whatever to be the head of sales for those entities. You really do need to have an arm for this. And I think this makes sense from that perspective. But I do have a lot of questions on this. And we've talked about this before with these health system generated organizations. Makes sense for them. They're unlocking a lot of potential within the organization, the venture-backed companies, the services they provide internally and that they're going to have to do internally anyway, and they're going to have to hire those people. They might as well make some revenue from it. And if they're good at it, they'll make decent revenue from it. But I have questions. Was there a void that needed to be filled? Or Providence Services recognized as the industry best? What's the long-term player? They're going to go public, sell to PE, become the next Leidos. I think we always, when we choose a service provider, you have to ask that question now. What is the future of this? Are they going public? Are they going to be around? Are they going to be around in 3 years? Do I sign a 5-year agreement with somebody? I don't know where they're going to be in 5 years. I would like to, at least explore that. I'm wondering if I would use them as a CIO. I don't know if I would use them as a CIO, but here's what I do know. I would vet them. And it's one of the easiest things to vet because, first of all, they're using their own services. So you could talk internally to their group. Now they're going to position you with their best people to talk to say, hey, they do a wonderful job. So you have to take that into consideration. But that's the same thing with any reference, right? They're not going to send you to somebody they're struggling with as a client. But check your references. Get the internal reference of Providence, go talk to them. Get the external references as well. Who's using them? How do they like them? And just vet them like you normally would. That's a so what on this. A couple of back and forths. Ryan Procio, talent acquisition leader, healthcare IT. I would imagine that there may be conflicts of interest between their future customers and Providence. And I responded to that. I'm not sure if there's going to be a conflict so much as part of the market that isn't accessible to them due to competing in the healthcare space. When you think about it, if they go into a market where they're competitive in nature, say the Seattle market, and they go over to UW, University of Washington is probably never going to buy services from them. And if they do, if they're buying them because they acquired a company that happened to be doing business with them, I guarantee you, whoever has that contract right now is talking about how to divest from that contract. It's just, so there's going to be part that's unavailable. I don't think there's going to be much of a conflict of interest. I think it's going to be well known up front. Deborah Proctor, my former CEO at St. Joe's Health System, retired, says, great questions, but I'm short on answers at this point. I imagine it is a strategy fit revenue generation that they see as scalable and which can balance out the decreasing margins in their base business. And she makes a great point there that I've heard this from other CEOs that they're worried about the declining margins and they need areas that have decent margins to buoy the rest of the business. And this could be that type of play for Providence. So just something to keep an eye on. Let's see, should I do one more? Yeah, I'll do one more because this is pretty relevant to everyone that's going on here. Seema Verma spoke at the Health 2020 conference, and it's interesting because, we keep talking about this. It's not a free market, but Seema Verma and all the people in that group right now, CMS, ONC, just that whole group believes that free market principles are going to change healthcare. And a couple of key quotes from this. I think it is important for providers to have skin in the game, she said. Just having upside risk doesn't really produce the type of savings and quality measures that we want. They want a free market. They want upside, they want downside, and they want the consumer to have choice. So that's what they're talking about. And she goes on to say, I think that the issue we have in value-based care is that many of our models, unfortunately, are not working the way we would like them two. They are not producing the types of savings that taxpayers deserve. And my so what on this is, if you're not managing risk today, risk-based contracts and population health, our populations, managing the risk of a population and having those risk-based contracts, you probably will be in the future. I think there's two drivers. The first being the government. I think if this continues, if this model continues to, we'll see what happens in the election, but if this continues to be the model for the next 4 years, you're going to see some significant changes in terms of how healthcare is reimbursed and compensated, and CMS is going to lead the way in that. The second driver for this, to be honest with you, is COVID. COVID changed the way we think about things, right? Payers were flush during COVID. Providers were on their knees. And it's really not hard to imagine that health systems right now are trying to figure out how to grow their at-risk contracts just to mitigate their risk moving forward in the healthcare space. The reason I bring that up, a lot of different skills required, and a lot of health systems have failed in doing this in the past. So just something to keep in mind. You're probably entering into the risk-based contracts, into the payer side. And if you're in the payer, you're probably entering into the provider side. Interesting. Here's what we're going to do. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to hit some of the headlines just to keep you current on what's going on. Walmart begins selling health plans in time for Medicare's annual enrollment period. Healthcare Finance News. That's an important move. You're going to see that not only them, there's another story down here. Here's how Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple are targeting the health insurance market. That's a fierce healthcare story. All of these are going to be in October, so if you just go out there and look for them. So you have Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Walmart entering the payer space. I guess if you looked at what happened during COVID, you're saying, hey, it's better to be a payer than a provider. And they're trying to figure out how to get into that space. Next headline, Lyft teams up with Epic to integrate rideshare capabilities into the EHR. This is from Healthcare Innovation. I think that's a great move for Lyft. Obviously, if you can get into the workflow and into that market share that is Epic, then that is an easy way to get rideshare to and from your appointments. Chime names 2020 most wired hospitals. I like this program. I didn't used to. I do now. Just having looked at it a lot more closely and under Chime's leadership, I think it's going to be a good program. The thing I like about these programs is it gets health systems to focus on the right things. It makes a competitive landscape for improving your system so that you can serve your communities better. So I like that. I'm going to highlight the top 7. I'm not going to highlight the 60, 71 that are in here. But the top 7, Avera Health System in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in LA, Geisinger Health System, Danville, Pennsylvania, Jackson Health System in Miami, Lehigh Valley Health Network in Allentown, Pennsylvania, UC Health in Aurora, Colorado, and UPMC in Pittsburgh. So congratulations to those guys. That's a great direction, great honor to be a part of that. Next story, Southwest adds service in Chicago, in Houston, other seasonal locations. Now, I know you're thinking, Bill, I think you pulled the wrong headline. The only reason I pulled this one out is 3/4 of the way down the article, they talk about their partnership with Stanford Medical Center or Stanford Medical School. I don't know which, but they talk about how Stanford is helping Southwest to put the protocols and procedures together for their airplanes and for their back to work and a bunch of other stuff. And if you're an academic medical center, that's an interesting opportunity for you to play that role. And I would imagine they're probably getting compensated for that role, to be honest with you. I think it could be a revenue opportunity as well. Let's see, WHO, anyway, I'll share it anyway. WHO warns against COVID-19 lockdowns due to economic damage. And I think that's important. I've been saying this from the beginning. We've got to look at these things from a multidimensional lens. Obviously, when a pandemic hits, you look at it from a medical lens and safety, and we've got to take care of people, and that's absolutely appropriate. But there's also the economic downside. This article goes into what's going on in some of these other countries. The lockdown in the US, in Europe, and other countries has really impacted some of these other countries that rely on the services that they sell and the goods that they sell into those economies that were locked down. And they're in dire straits right now. And so I think when we get to 2021 and 2022, we will be able to step back and look at this thing with the academics will be able to step back and really take a look at this through a lot of different lenses, the mental health lens, the economics lens, the medical lens, and probably a half dozen others that I'm not thinking about right now. And I think that's going to be good and hopefully prepare us for the next time that this happens. Hopefully not in our lifetime, but hopefully to prepare us. Let's see, covered that. Microsoft will allow employees to stay remote permanently. I don't know how I highlighted that because I've seen now 2 or 3 different companies saying, hey, this is a permanent situation. I don't think it's going to be in health IT. I think I'm hearing from CIOs hybrid, and I think that's right. I think it is hybrid. We have too many roles that require us to be at the elbow with the provider, and until it's just too hard to not do a hybrid model at the least with the way we deliver services today. Let's see. Valley Health System uses low code to meet mobile app development challenges. Healthcare IT news. I like this. I like this a lot, actually. I think we should be looking at low code options, especially for those smaller organizations that don't have the coding capability and whatnot. Low code is an interesting way to go. So take a look at some of those things. Very interesting. Anything else I would highlight on this? Last one. InterSystems Iris data platform adopted by Epic for its new generation of high performance scalability and architecture flexibility. I like this. I like the Iris platform actually a fair amount. Epic is familiar with InterSystems. I've been using them for a while. But make no mistake, this is a re-platforming. And Iris is one of those advanced architecture platforms. It's going to give them the ability to do a lot of things, but it is a re-platforming. I don't know how long it's going to take them to do this. But this is what I was talking about when I said Epic is falling behind because of their architecture. This is one of the ways that Epic can ensure that they don't fall too far behind if they re-platform. And this is a re-platform, which is exciting. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it for this week. Don't forget, if you want to participate in the conversations, go over to LinkedIn, Bill J. Russell, and follow me. I'll be posting an article a day during the week. And I think it's a great way to interact with you. You can also follow the show, obviously, on LinkedIn, This Week in Health IT. That's where you're going to get the clips and all the stuff that we drop around the show. So that's all for this week. Don't forget to sign up for Clip Notes. If you aren't familiar with the Clip Notes referral program, go ahead and hit our resources page on the website. We have some prizes we're giving away. So if you want to refer your friends to the Clip Notes email list, where they will get a summary of each show. They'll get the bullet points and they'll get 1 to 4 video clips right there. Easy way to stay current, easy way to see what was on the show without having to listen to the whole show. You can decide whether you're going to or not. This was really designed by you, for you, and I want to get it into the hands of as many people as possible. That's why we're doing the referral program. And all people have to do is hit the website, go to the subscribe page, and remember to put your email in as referred by, because we have some gifts. We have a work from home setup from This Week in Health IT. If you get 10 referrals, we're going to give you a black moleskin notebook with our logo embossed on this. I love these things, by the way. My entire life's in this. You can see all the thinking that I do. I don't have a great memory per se, so I like writing things down, and I always have one of those with me. And so I love giving them out to people. And then the grand prize, if you will, is whoever gets the most referrals gets to come on this show with me to discuss the news. And so you're going to get to take Drex's chair for 1 week, sit across from me. You can select whatever news stories you want. I'll select some on my end, and we'll just go back and forth just like Drex and I do. It'll be a lot of fun. So I hope you'll participate in the referral program. I think it's a great service, and I hope you think it is as well. Special thanks to our channel sponsors: VMware, Starbridge Advisors, Galen Healthcare, Health Lyrics, Sirius Healthcare, Pro Talent Advisors, and our 2 most recent additions, Health Next and McAfee, for choosing to invest in developing the next generation of health leaders. This show is a production of This Week in Health IT. For more great content, check out the website, thisweekhealth.com, or the YouTube channel. We keep doing some great stuff out there, and hopefully you appreciate how we're organizing the content out there. Please check back every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday as we release shows through the end of the year. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.